Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the College Cinephile. My name's Raven Nelson. I'll be your host for today, and this is Dr. Phillips, our guest interviewee.
Hi.
Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
So, just start off with a basic question. What do you research here at TTU?
Sure. I teach in the Film and Media Studies program in the Department of English over in the College of Arts and Sciences, and basically I look at genre and the way that genres, not so much individual genres, although it's always part of it, but the idea of genre and how and why it was brought into mass media, the media of the 20th century and now into the 21st. Mostly I'm a historian, film historian, but media historian more generally, and someone who's particularly interested in the way that business cultures, the industry of media, creates certain parameters within which individual artists work.
Okay. One of the things that I noticed you look into is like genre across cultures as well.
Sure.
What genres do you think that translate particularly well across cultures?
There's a number of good examples. I think what allows a genre, specific or individual genre, to translate is the degree to which the meanings and the emotions that the genre was originally developed to encompass, to narrativize, to create individualized stories around, the degree to which those transfer. So the horror film, fear, right? Whether it's fear of an urban space, fear of the monstrous, fear of technology, those things translate across all cultures. The Western and the idea of this border between individual agencies and the uncontrollable frontier, whether that's a frontier that's based on geographic expansion, the West in America as we knew it in the late 19th century, or whether it's space, the final frontier, whatever it is. So the Western as a particular form that has been used to articulate these ideas of tension, of confusion, of uncertainty about that border region. A border region that's physical, but it's also very intellectual, very emotional, something we feel as much as we think about. Those two, I mean, many others as well, but I think those two are good examples of not just which individual ones move well, but why.
Right. So another thing I saw you did development or research in is the development of the drive-in movie theater.
Yeah, that ties to my larger interests in this history of the industry, history of the ways in which larger decision-making structures create a space for media environments. So the particular angle, so to speak, that I look at in my history of the drive-in movie is why, after World War II, is there this sudden explosion in the number of drive-in theaters? And I mean, this is just exhibition history, and we can think about exhibition history in many ways. We can come forward to say the change from the single-screen theater to the multi-screen theater in the late 70s and especially in the 80s, the motion or the movement of exhibition from standalone spaces to things like the mall. And then the way they changed again in the 90s to these palaces, again, but palaces built around technology, not palaces built around architecture. The 1920s saw literally picture palaces, teens and 20s, come out of nowhere almost, but it was this appropriation of a style to give value to the experience of going to the movie theater, right? To make it different from staying at home, to make it different from going to vaudeville, or the previous version of film theaters and Nickelodeons, which were basically just storefront theaters. Low-end exhibition experiences, regardless of the quality of the film, the industry, filmmakers, but also especially the men and women that own the theaters wanted that impetus to draw you out of your home, to draw you away from the other things that were available within the entertainment world, to be significant. And so in the same way that architecture works that way in the teens and 20s, we see technology working that way in the late 80s and 90s, THX, the digital sound revolution, the change to these spaces in which the seating was on platforms and not on that sloped floor, right, to give you a better view of the screen, the widening of the screens even larger. These are all connected. The drive-in movie project is related to this, but generally when we talk about the explosion, so to speak, of post-war drive-in movie theaters, we reduce it to two things, to the development of car culture in the US after the war and suburbanization. But there were economic and legal factors behind those. And so that's what that particular research looks at, is how did the Supreme Court, which was making decisions breaking down monopoly structures from the 1920s, that was working in the late 1940s again, because the Supreme Court was full of judges that had been appointed in the New Deal period under Roosevelt, was working simultaneously with a Republican-filled Congress. So post-war, the election had turned over from a primarily Democrat to primarily Republican Congress, so they were passing legislation that was intended to promote interstate travel, to promote shipping, to promote the development of highways. And these things caused suburbanization. It wasn't suddenly just that people wanted to get away from the cities. There were some economic, legal, industrial underlying factors. And as a historian, those are the kind of things that interest me. So how does the type of film that then moves into those drive-in spaces, which few people, popular culture rarely talks about the fact that these were originally family spaces, trying to draw the families that were moving to the suburbs. And that's why when you watch something like Grease, you see the playground that's adjacent to the drive-in movie space. And it's not because they thought that teens wanted to go play on the playground. It's because originally those were built there in order for the families to come and have picnics and an entire evening out away from the home, drawing them away from the other primary mode of entertainment in that moment, which was, of course, television. So as a means of differentiation. But then, of course, it becomes this space for the teenager, for the passion pits, and then ultimately in the 70s, the kind of exploitation films, grindhouse films that end up there. So rather than just thinking about the creative energies related to genre in that way, it's sort of backing this narrative, backing the story, backing the history further and further back to sort of see what it is that is driving these changes. Again, just generally the parameters within which creative energies are expended.
Right, yeah, that's really fascinating that you can take it from like the level of Congress to how that affects movies, to oversimplify what you just said.
No, but it's exactly that kind of chain of historical thinking that I get interested in.
I mean, it's very fascinating. And so what do you think about kind of a resurgence in that we're seeing, like a resurgence in old film things in general? Like there's starting to be more showings of film like on film rather than through through digital now, and there's starting to be some more drive-in movie theaters. We've got one here in Lubbock. So what do you think that says about our culture now?
In the same way that the drive-in movie was a response to certain conditions. So some of them were very broad cultural conditions, this transition from an urban space to a suburban or an intermediate space between the rural and the urban, but also a response to the growth of television as a new technology. Visual technology in the home rather than just the audio technology of the radio, but offering many of the same kind of stories, etc. But you had to differentiate what you could offer in any entertainment space, in the same way that the teens and 20s see that effort of differentiation from vaudeville or the theater space as live performances. And always the old and the new commingle in these spaces, or are brought in to compete with each other at different economic levels, right? So I think that in our environment, which is becoming increasingly moved towards a norm of engaging with media in a way that is your iPhone there or a laptop, right? It's a very personalized, individualized mode of experience. Even if you're sitting next to somebody, it's not a collective experience. That some of these older forms of collective experience, the theater space as a space not just for viewing, but for experiencing that kind of entertainment. Entertainment not in just content, but entertainment in the delivery package, so to speak. And the drive-in as a specific form of that, which has various levels of nostalgia for different people. So, for example, many of my generation had some childhood experience at the drive-in theater, and now we have children and we want to expose our children to that. Younger people, your generation, have more the lore or the myth of the drive-in, right? Secondhand information about the uniqueness of those experiences, whether it's from personal contacts, parents, uncles, aunts, or whether it's through the media itself. Again, going back and watching something like Grease and seeing this space, which you're unfamiliar with, but here in Lubbock, you can actually go and experience that. It's a little bit different than certainly it was in the 50s or in the 70s, as Grease sort of as an intermediate point, set in the 50s, but taking place as a film in the 70s. Whatever level of engagement you have with that nostalgia, you actually have a way to engage with it. The Alamo Draft House is a very good example of being able to simultaneously engage multiple kinds of entertainment ideas. So there is the contemporary Hollywood idea of entertainment, which is Marvel Universe cinema, and you can go and see those there. And experience that kind of world, but you can also go and watch films from the 70s. Or the 60s. I showed Barbarella as part of a class that I'm teaching on adaptation, but I showed it in that space, and we had audiences that were members that were not necessarily associated with the course from the community. You can go and see films from the 40s and 50s. Professor Weiner, who teaches the Honors College, he is on staff at the library, and myself had programmed this semester a couple of Hitchcock films, mostly for his class, which is on Hitchcock, but then I did one with respect to adaptation. And so we had a very good turnout, I felt, for these older Hitchcock films from the 40s and 50s. And then I taught, early in the semester, I showed a silent film at the Alamo. Not silent. Silent film is a sort of a categorical misnomer. These were never silent. They always had live music being performed in the space. Of course, with our current technologies, it's rare to get that kind of live experience, though they do occasionally come through and exist. The music school partnered with the Flatland Film Fest a year or two ago and did Nosferatu as a live performance with a full symphony, not just one person at a piano, but I think it was a 40-person symphony. So there is the opportunity for these kind of experiences. They're just much less frequent. And attending a large university like Texas Tech offers a significant number of those more than you would find in a lot of places. And now the Alamo's been here a couple of years. There's other theaters in town that also do some similar things. I think the Cinemarks run a weekly nostalgia series, basically, which is old classic Hollywood films primarily on Sundays and Wednesdays, the same film twice a week. But there are avenues to those kind of experiences. And it's just this idea that cinema isn't just one form of presentation any longer. It is all over and multiple forms of exposure, multiple forms of presentation, and each comes with its own sort of packaging. And it can be a nostalgic packaging, and nostalgia in this case can refer to teens, 20s, 40s, 60s 80s, whatever. And the experience of filming those moments was different, and sometimes those differences are highlighted, and sometimes they're just sort of abstracted to a single kind of nostalgia experience. But and I think that audiences, that viewers, that individuals are willing to look for a film experience that goes beyond the increasingly normal experience of the laptop or the television, which has long been, since the turn to video in the 80s, one of the primary but increasingly dominant versions of that. So.
All right, well, thanks for joining us on the show.
Sure.
It's been a great time.
It's been my pleasure. Good luck going forward.
Thank you.
And good luck with the rest of the semester.
Thank you. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the College Cinephile. If you notice, Raven Nelson isn't here, but instead you have M. Rubio.
And Sydney Hatfield.
And welcome back to the creatively named title, the Hidden Gems segment, where we talk about obscure movies and films that are just under the radar. And today we'll be talking about the 2014 Book of Life, produced by Guillermo del Toro.
And directed by Jorge Gutierrez.
Bestly known for Maya and Miguel. Cue the music.
And anything can happen.
Ah, look there. Two best friends.
Oh, in love with the same girl. You two are acting like fools.
Wait, me too? You picked yourself a feisty one.
So The Book of Life, it stars Diego Luna as Manolo, excuse me, Zoe Saldana as Maria, and Channing Tatum as Joaquin, Kate Del Castillo as La Muerte, and Ron Perlman as Zibala. Also Ice Cube as the candle maker.
Yeah, that was like the big turn off for me when I first started watching this movie. Like, this movie would be like fantastic if it had like, if there weren't for all these little things that I guess we'll call like Hollywoodifications, where it just takes like Hollywood mainstream elements and puts them in a film that's like doesn't really need to be there. And Ice Cube is one of those examples.
Yeah.
That was like for me like one of the biggest things that continues with like the modern music and a lot of the other stuff.
I agree with the modern music. I really didn't like that. Watching it in 2017, going back to music that was popular in 2014, it's like, ooh, yeah, no.
It's like whenever you watch those like music, now that's what I call music. Have you seen those music videos? Have you watched them like back in like the early 2000s? And then you notice like, wow, none of these songs are popular anymore.
Yeah.
That's what this is what this movie has, like the soundtrack of this movie. It's just songs that are not popular anymore. It's now that's what I call music of that year.
I think using music from, what's popular at the moment really automatically dates the movie. So like when you go back and watch it, you're like, yeah, no.
I mean, I guess it depends on your tastes. Like I know like there's a lot of music that was mainstream at the time, like you would see in the 70s, like Saturday Night Fever, the Grease.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like stuff that was like.
That's true. It kind of begs the question, like, what makes it, because like those are timeless movies. So like what makes a movie timeless when they use current popular mainstream music,
I think it comes down to the fact that it's a movie about the Day of the Dead, so it has no reason to be in the movie in the first place.
Yeah.
Unlike this is not really a movie, but Grim Fandango uses more of its setting to use a soundtrack to bring forth like the Day of the Dead elements, and I feel that soundtrack is more timeless in that sense than something like Book of Life.
Yeah.
But it has its qualities though. Like for one thing, the animation like still
beautiful.
It's really
I love
well
the
done.
models.
The models are great. It has a nice like contrast of colors. It's very colorful.
Yes.
Especially when you get to the underworld sections of the film. It pops really well. I feel that's the thing that's going to age really well years down the line. But what about the story? What do you think of the story?
I think the story is kind of weak in some places, but overall I really like it because ultimately it is trying to spread Mexican culture by telling us about the Day of the Dead. And the Day of the Dead is a really cool holiday that I wish we in American culture celebrated because death is such a hard thing to deal with, and the way that Mexican culture deals with it is great, you know? Yeah.
For me, it was kind of like a lot of wasted potential for me. And I don't want to be like too cynical on the show where we promote hidden gems, but like for me, it just like they wasted a lot. Like there was a scene where, like especially with a female character, they push a feminism element.
They really, yeah.
And that's fine in of itself, but they don't do anything with it.
Yeah.
It's one scene, and after that, it goes into the traditional love story that you see in all the Disney movies and all the traditional love romantics. And I was just like, so we're not going back to that feminism thing? Like,
Yeah.
Like I'm not really big on Frozen, but at least they developed that in a way that's interesting and it's well developed.
Yeah. One part that like kind of bothered me was like when he goes to like sing to her and like he's like, play from the heart. That's what she told me, and he does that, and she's like, nah. Like,
well, no, I feel that's fine. That's.
Well, I mean, but then he does it again, and she's like, yeah, no, it's cool. Like, there's just no consistency in that.
That's also like. Well, you can also argue that she kind of like, I guess, like developed and softened up as how you say it. But like, again, like they push a feminism element, like they kind of push like a healthy form of rejection right there. But then they kind of just drop that like as soon as she gets saved by the main villain. Which I'm glad there isn't really a main villain. I mean, there's like there's the bandit, but that's really about it. But everything else is like
Zibalda.
Yeah, and that's but.
But in the end, he is a good guy. So
I wish they kept him a little. Another thing, yeah. I mean, who cares? It came out in like
2014.
Like one of the things that I know wasted potential is the rivalry between the two characters.
Yeah.
Because I thought they were going to go for more of like the movie Warrior or Rush, where there's like a kind of an ambiguous rivalry where there's not really a good guy or a bad guy between the main characters.
Yeah.
But like after like the first 30 minutes, you have a complete understanding of who to root for in that movie, and that was like I felt again that was wasted potential as well.
Like I mean, I wouldn't call Joaquin the antagonist or anything because he really isn't. But
he's certainly unlikable, and like,
he is very unlikable.
And like I feel like it would have been more interesting if both characters had some sort of like both flaws and something that makes them approachable and relatable.
Yeah.
That way it would make some more of a confliction. There's like actual drama in a film. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I can't believe there's drama in a film. But like that's really the thing. That's really the things that really bother me. Overall, like I feel like if any of this stuff like intrigues you, then this film then you should go watch this film. There's a lot of it brings that aesthetic of Day of the Dead, but not really the story of it. And that's really kind of if that's your thing, then you should definitely go watch it. But if you find stuff like any Hollywoodifications, like the fact that Ice Cube's in the film, or just like there's like a really basic mainstream story to it, then you should probably just give it a pass. That's really just me.
Yeah, I think they were just, I don't know, I guess they were just trying to get the movie out. I don't know.
Or maybe they're just trying to appeal to a wider audience, just like you said, to like maybe get like a decent box office, and which is understandable, but like it hurts the quality of the film in the long run.
I mean, when you look, it had a budget of $50 million, and it made $52 million in North America and $49.6 million in other countries, which is a total of $99.8 million. So it made back its budget, but all things like considering like advertising and stuff and other things that go into that, it really wasn't profitable, And so, I mean, he wanted to make more movies off of this, and he didn't get to because, like I said, it didn't make enough money. Yeah.
So like basically what it comes down to is like if you want to see a nice movie about mortality, you should see like Kubo or something like that, or see Frozen if you want to see a film that has like really interesting relationship dynamics or something like that. But other than that, I think we'll wrap it off there. So if any of this stuff interests you, go see The Book of Life, and we'll be right back with the College Cinephile. Stay with us. Welcome back to the College Cinephile. As always, it's M. Rubio, and today we are here with another segment with an actual title, which is called Why Does This Exist? This segment is very simple. It's a review where we talk about movies that are so bad, but not bad enough to be guilty pleasures, but not good enough to have an actual underrated gem segment. This is just movies that are just bad, offensive, and just plain trash. Our first movie for today is Biodome. And I'm with Sebastian Reyes. Sebastian,
Ew.
tell us about one of the worst comedies ever made, Biodome.
All right, so Biodome is a film in extremely loose terms. It stars the always phenomenal Pauly Shore, Stephen Baldwin, and Walter Peck from Ghostbusters. I know the actor has a name. I do know the name. But he's Walter Peck in this movie. He's the exact same character.
He's the environmentalist.
He's the crazy environmentalist that's trying to create a new, like, a utopia, essentially, Garden of Eden type of thing. Same character, and unfortunately he doesn't have Bill Murray to go off of.
I'm going to have to retroactively like cut that line where it says when you say always phenomenal Pauly Shore, because Pauly Shore and that line that sentence should not be in the
Those
same.
two words should never exist together.
Yeah, I hate Pauly Shore with an absolute passion.
I think most people hate Pauly Shore.
His comedy is just obnoxious and like almost mean-spirited in some senses. It's just it's very annoying. There's nothing clever about his stuff, like in my opinion. Like I try to reserve like hatred for like comedians I don't particularly like. But for Pauly Shore is like one of the few exceptions where I'm like, I absolutely hate this comedian. It's just, yeah, there's very few things I hate, but Pauly Shore is like on that list. I think the only thing like on that list is like spinach or something like that. Like I don't know, but like,
You hate Pauly Shore as much as spinach?
I don't know. Then again, I haven't had spinach in a while, so maybe I should try it and like maybe I'll get a new perspective and like
And a newfound respect for Pauly Shore.
Yeah, so it's just you should like to really tell how bad this movie is. Like the way I discovered this movie was I was searching through Metacritic, and you know they have their highest scores thing.
Yeah,
and I was,
the bottom 100.
and I was like, I'm gonna see what the bottom is, and one of those things was Biodome because it has a 1% on Metacritic, and I was like, I gotta see this film. Like I gotta see what's so bad about it, and like I didn't think it was gonna be that bad, and it is.
No.
Like this movie is so bad. It's got a 4. It's one of the few films that's got a 4 on IMDb. Like. And like IMDb has like the most lax review system like in the history of mankind.
True.
It's like it's so horribly lenient, and it's just. And another thing you can tell how bad this movie is. The first 2 trivia things on the IMDb just talks about how bad the movie is. Like apparently Alec Baldwin told Stephen Baldwin that doing this movie would be the single like most career destroying thing you could ever do. And the second film, I forgot the name of the actor. She is the scientist. Kylie Minogue. She said that was also like the worst like professional thing she's ever done was Biodome. So like that's a twofer. Like just talk about how bad this movie is.
I mean the film itself is very much of the 90s in the sense that it has a lot of the worst and annoying tropes of the 90s. Probably the one that gets on my nerve the most is the trope that, you know, even though we're losers in Stephen Baldwin and Pauly Shore, we have 2 insanely hot girlfriends
and a nice house.
And a nice house that in no logical universe those things would never actually exist. And probably what sets you up probably the earliest is besides of what you're in for, besides Pauly Shore's god annoying sound effects that go throughout
surfer
the movie.
accent.
Or his stoner surfer accent. Is one of the first earliest jokes in the movie is like you're supposed to believe, oh, look at these 2 quirky friends. Is where you have Pauly Shore is getting his toenails clipped, but he's not using a clipper, and himself, and Stephen Baldwin is not using a toenail clipper. Stephen Baldwin is clipping Pauly Shore's toenails by biting them, and there's like chilling on the couch together, laughing their butts off, and then their girlfriends come and like, what do you guys ever do things? I'm like, why are you with them?
Yeah, it's just, yeah. And like you mentioned it's cliche, but it's also like, it's a weird paradox. It's so horribly cliche, but at the same time, it's unorthodox, but not in a good way. Not in like the Pink Flamingos unorthodox, more in like just like Freddy Got Fingered unorthodox, where it's just, which is another movie we got to do some other time.
At some point.
Because like that movie is just as bad, if not worse, than Biodome. Yeah, like I think also the obnoxious thing about it is that it's trying to push this environmental message
that does not belong in the movie whatsoever.
Yeah, it feels like they just added it. It feels like a Snickers bar to like a steak dinner kind of thing, where it's just like, and I feel bad comparing Biodome to a steak dinner as well.
Yeah,
I think a more comparable thing will be like
McDonald's?
a Snicker bar to like a pile of trash, you know. I'm like, yeah, I guess
good
that's not.
comparison.
I guess that's nice, but you're putting it on a pile of trash. Like, it's just,
Mm-hmm.
it's so obnoxious. Like, it's hard to explain why something isn't funny. Like, you know, because like that's always like the common thing. But it's just like, I'm imagining Raven has to sift through the footage to edit this thing, like to input it, and like I can just imagine her rolling her eyes at how obnoxious and horrible this movie is. And I feel I'm sorry, Raven, if you're watching this and having to edit B-roll into this footage, but it's just don't blame us, blame Biodome.
Blame Biodome.
So I think we covered our bases. Pauly Shore is annoying. Stephen Baldwin is obnoxious. There's no reason for them to have extremely attractive girlfriends, and there's a tacked on moral message about the environment. And there's also the fact that it's been rumored that it was a Bill and Ted sequel, which it's not true, but like that's like the only interesting fact about it. Like
because
like,
that's totally something you could believe happens. And that's kind of want to on a little ultra tangent, but my first reference to Biodome was when I was a kid watching Family Guy in one of the earliest seasons where Brian is on trial for Mr. Pewterschmidt's dog, and they have a litter of puppies, and they're trying to discredit Brian as being a good father. So the defense lawyer that's working for Lois' dad, Mr. Pewterschmidt, is trying to like give like examples of like his bad taste in movies, and he's like, and what are these two films that you rented at Blockbuster? It's like Biodome, and I think that one was Encino Man. I don't know for sure with Biodome, but
both Pauly Shore films.
Yeah, it's like, and what do those two films have in common? Pauly Shore. Pauly Shore! It's like the entire jury is like, oh god, he's terrible. That was probably my first experience to Biodome. And after I saw Biodome, I was like, okay, I gotta see, is this how he really acts in his comedy? Or
he's definitely playing a caricature, like you know, but at the same time, it's a really bad caricature. It's not fun.
Yeah. They both have. I mean, I know he has kind of that weird like pseudo Jufro thing going on.
I think the character name is the Weasel.
The Weasel, and Stephen Baldwin has just mini white dreadlocks for some reason. He's just always wearing like khaki shorts, undershirt, Hawaiian overshirt, sandals.
Even the poster is obnoxious. Like the poster is just like these two faces just staring at you. Like it's so like in your face and it's gross. Like, just nothing about this movie is good. I can't think of anything, despite this.
Have we even gotten to the plot of Biodome at all?
Oh yeah, there's the plot where they're just like, I think they're on a road trip. I've only seen this movie once. I will never see this movie ever again. The movie's not worth it.
It's it's not that they go on a road trip. They get finally left by their girlfriends, because the girlfriends are going to the opening of the Biodome by Walter Peck, where he's basically creating a Garden of Eden, a sustainable, permanent, stable eco environment where they can grow plants, vegetables, food, crops, that kind of thing. So we'll be able to, outlast, because, the evil of man, greenhouse gases, which, I'm not gonna get into that topic.
Yeah, if you thought Avatar was in your face, then this movie.
This movie is way more in your face. And of course, the boys I guess they kind of go on a road trip. Yeah, they got to go get their girls back. So they know where they're going. Of course, hijinks annoyingly ensue while they're trying to get there. And eventually they come in like the back way of the Biodome, and they find, for some reason, because it literally is kind of a giant dome, but it's not a metal casing. It's not like you put like a fish bowl on top of something. It's almost this kind of like a somewhat hardened, more pliable plastic. And they somehow find like an open slit in it, and they sneak through, and they're like, "Oh my god, dude, this is so cool!" And they start just joking around, doing
and trashing the place, and
they start swinging around on like trees, destroying the ecosystem. And the thing was, like, only the scientists were going to be locked in there for I think 9 months. It's a sort of period of time. I can't remember which, unfortunately.
It was just an obnoxiously long period of time that they had to stay with
and
these
they're
two.
like, "Oh my god, we were sucking," and that's such a terrible premise for a movie where your premise of the movie is like, oh my god, these sophisticated, refined, and intelligent scientists are stuck for X amount of months with two of the worst people on the face of the earth.
That should be a Fear Factor episode.
That would, I would tap out so quickly in that.
You got to stay like
just put on headphones. Like, how long can you listen to Biodome?
Yeah, or 10 minutes. Like not 9 months, just 10 minutes. I think that would be suffice, because like I had to force myself to watch this movie. And just like it's an endurance test.
Within minutes, the scientists are like trying to escape. They're trying to like kill them at one point. They're trying to throw them out. They're trying to hoard their food so they'll die of starvation. They're like openly trying to murder these two guys for being insanely annoying.
And you're rooting for them too.
And yes, you're like, yes, I feel
exactly.
like,
I'm okay with them
like I
killing.
said, it's not like in Ghostbusters where like Walter Peck is blatantly, the kind of the pseudo villain of that movie. This is like just no, yeah, kill them, do it now.
But at least in Ghostbusters' defense, like you understand why he's like going after them because like they're technically like doing stuff that's like
they have like a mini nuclear reactor in a firehouse in the middle of New York.
So like you at least understand why he's like that, and in some respects you also understand it in Biodome, although it's just for the sheer fact that you hate these two characters so much. Like that's the only reason you're like okay with it.
Yeah, your two main protagonists are not. That's how I say protagonists. Protagonists. I mean, they're not likable in any way, shape, or form. Like we kind of established at the beginning of this, is they're supposed to be quirky. They're supposed to be kind of like lovable goofballs, but no, they're annoying. They do asinine things for the sake of being asinine. They have no logical rhyme or reason. If this was any other movie, if this was a horror movie, for instance, they would absolutely be like next to the tramp of the group. They would for sure be like the stoner character that dies second after, like immediately. And if this is Friday the 13th, part 15, whatever we're up to. But no, so the entire premise is thin at best. You're rooting for the supposed bad guy of the film to get rid of these two, and I will say, if there's one redeeming quality about this movie, the Stephen Baldwin and polish is that it can end. Okay, there's two redeeming qualities of this movie. Is it ends. It's not that long. It's still a slog to get through. Don't get me wrong. But in fairness, Stephen Baldwin and Pauly Shore do have pretty good chemistry with each other. You can tell, like, Stephen Baldwin knows that he's in a trash movie. He knows this is probably going to atom bomb his career. But he's at least having as much fun with it as he can. He's not phoning it in. He's not...
I guess, but that's
throwing daggers at Pauly Shore, like, why did you bring me into this?
I don't know. That's like, that's like, I guess that's like complimenting a skunk at that point. Like, I mean, at least its colors are nice, I guess. Like, it's just like.
It's like you punched me in the face, but at least I know what a punch to the face feels like now. So, it's all relative. Everything's relative to everything in the universe.
I guess. But, like, yeah, just this movie just frustrates me when I think about it. Like, it's not a movie I don't want to rewatch, and I just, even though I've seen the film only once, and I think that's
we've been planning this for a week, so I decided to watch it over last weekend, and it was painful to get through, and I almost immediately forgot everything about it. I like it after the weekend ended.
As bad as it is, it's pretty forgettable too.
Yes, it is. I forget it exists until you brought it up like last week. I was like, oh yeah, that's a thing that happened.
Yeah, well, that's because
we let that as a society.
That's because I tucked away a portion of my heart towards hating this movie because I hate it so much. Like, it's a garbage movie.
I think it's harder for me personally to sit through a bad horror movie than it is to sit for a bad comedy, because comedy can be bad for many different reasons. Like Adam Sandler movies are bad, but at least each one is bad for a different reason. Biodome is bad for a different reason. When horror movies are bad, it's just because it's almost for the exact same reasons why they're always bad. So I can forgive bad comedies a little bit, and I can forget them for the most part until I'll randomly, like 5 years, 10 years later, hear that title again, or I'll hear about Stephen Baldwin or Pauly Shore randomly and be like, oh yeah, Pauly Shore existed at one time.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Also think like, oh, so did Brendan Fraser at one time too.
Yeah, he will be missed.
Sort of.
That's all I gotta say. This film gets a 0 stars out of 20,000 stars.
I would also say for me, this would get me a solid 0 rating as well.
Well, yeah, I think all these films that are gonna appear on the Why This Exists will probably get a 0 at the very least. Like, this is not. We gotta make this clear. This is not a guilty pleasure. This is not an underrated gem. This does not fit in any other segment other than this us asking why does this exist?
Why was this made? Why at any point? Like, who read the script? What studio exec read the script and was like, this is gonna be genius?
I mean, it came out during a time when Pauly Shore was really hot at the time. Like, it was MTV, like the era of MTV.
Oh god. Oh, true.
And that's when he was really big at the time because forgot the name of the show. I don't remember it because I didn't watch MTV at the time.
Neither did
but
I.
like, just Daria. That's about it.
Solid.
Which is a great show and way better than Biodome. But
I think that's the main takeaway from this, ladies and gentlemen.
Go watch Daria. Yeah.
All right, don't waste your time with. I was gonna say Encino Man. I already forgot the name of the title. Go watch Daria.
Yeah, go watch a film. Go watch a show that has like great characters and analyzes the high school dynamics really well, and not a film that makes you want to punch yourself in the face repeatedly.
And on that note, this is M. Rubio. I'm Sebastian Reyes. Thank you for joining us on another episode of the College Cinephile.
If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you subscribe and like and comment if you will.
And follow us on Twitter and Facebook, please. Thank you.
Link in the description. Bye.
Bye.